Hey, good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here, back again with the second video of the day. It is still July 23rd, 2020. And yeah, this is the afternoon update. We have a lot to talk about. The tropics. I mean, it's just July 23rd. I tweeted just a little while ago a shot of the graphical tropical weather outlook, and I'm like, it is July, right? I mean, I knew we were supposed to have a busy hurricane season, but you know, this is starting to get a little bit ridiculous. And I'll show you what I mean. We need to start off with something very important here. This tweet, speaking of tweets, this one from Ben Knoll earlier today, this is really important because he doesn't hype stuff. You know, I don't. We tell it like it is, and we let the chips fall where they may. And when we see something that's concerning, you know, we want to make sure we point it out. And here we go. This is Ben's tweet, saying that this is one of the strongest subseasonal signals for hurricane action in recent memory. I mean, that is wow. A convective pulse passes in the short term, then a standing wave develops over the eastern Atlantic. The trailing suppressed wave remains over the Pacific. This is the Japan Meteorological Agency weeklies, and basically what this means is, in the short term, the next several days or so, a little shot of convective activity is going to slide across from west to east, and that'll kind of juice things up a little bit. That's giving us Douglas. That's going to probably give us weak tropical storm Hannah. I think it'll be weak, and is helping to some extent and may continue to help Gonzalo, and then this next system that's coming off Africa that we're going to look at. And then that kind of passes, leaving in its in its wake this overall standing wave that just sits there of upward motion. That's what that means. The atmosphere has got plenty of these undulations in it, sinking air and then areas of rising air. And when these waves stand in one area or another, it fosters development or squashes development, respectively, in that part of the tropics, usually throughout the rest of that particular area's season. And in the northern hemisphere, we're talking about, of course, hurricane season or typhoon season in the Pacific. And look, no typhoons at all in, I can't even remember when the last one was, months ago, right? And so this green that we're seeing here from the JMA is really, really telling as to what is coming down the road. It's only late July right now. It's actually getting ready to get far more busy from here. And this is a big reason why right here. We've been talking about this. We talk about it every year, but there it is. That's the signal right there. Very warm sea surface temperature anomalies. The water temperatures are already warm, but they're warmer than average throughout this whole area. And then in the northwest Atlantic, holy smokes, that's amazing how warm that is. That is going to invite trouble on a lot of levels, not just from the possibility of having intense hurricanes maybe going up the East Coast. That's certainly a possibility, and that's a possibility any year, all right, to be fair. But this warm water relative to average will also provide more fuel and help to develop a much stronger ridge over the western Atlantic here that would keep, it's not like they're all they better not all hit land, I mean, come on. But it's going to keep a majority of them heading west for a good deal instead of just turning out in the open Atlantic like that. We're going to see some long trackers into Central America, I believe, into the Gulf Coast. Some of them will certainly head out. But this is the type of pattern overall, combined with what Ben was tweeting, that sets us up for not only a busy season with the numbers of storms, but the landfall potential is high. The islands of the Caribbean, the Bahamas, the United States, Central America, Gulf Coast, Mexico, wow. I mean, if you haven't thought about preparing and you thought, yeah, these hurricane guys, they say it every year. I don't. I mean, when we see it, we say it, but if it's a down year, it's a down year, and this is not going to be a down year. And these are the warning shots across our collective bows, right? You know that naval analogy there? In the Navy, you shoot a shot across the bow, it's a warning shot. The bow of a ship. This is it. All right? So, to that point, here we go. TD number 8, Gonzalo, and now a new system emerging off the coast of Africa as we speak. In the eastern Pacific, of course, we do have Douglas. Not much change overall with any of these systems. Let's look at it from a satellite perspective. Here is Douglas, a very well-defined hurricane over in the eastern Pacific. We will look at this more tomorrow in the morning because it'll be a day closer to impacting Hawaii. Very well-defined central dense overcast with it, CDO as we call it. And that's well on its way to heading towards Hawaii with some definite impacts there. This is just a big mess, which is good, because if it was bundling and getting its act together, it definitely would have time to strengthen before coming into the coastal bend of Texas. Of course, this is TD8. Out here is Gonzalo, which is fighting. But there's a couple of interesting things we're going to look at with Gonzalo that I'm going to kind of speculate about, and we'll start with it now. First, the satellite presentation is definitely disheveled from where it was previously. That being said, you can clearly see this vigorous circulation right there. No doubt about it. The vorticity and the energy with this system, its will to live, its heart is strong, put it that way. And it's interesting because there is some deeper convection trying to fire right near that center, and it's not strong wind blowing against it like this, shearing the tops off. We've seen that in years past, we know. It's not that this is moving along at 25 miles per hour, just racing through the tropics. We've seen that. Chantal, I think it was, in 2013 was a prime example. So what is the issue with this heat engine? I mentioned it earlier. It's like the frame of the vehicle is there. You remember that movie Days of Thunder? Real quick, kind of help you understand this. Tom Cruise movie. Take it or leave it, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. If you remember the movie, as Robert Duvall was the guy helping to build the car, and he talked about it. He's like, I'm going to give you a good frame. I'm going to put a good, whatever he said. And that's the thing. You got to have a good frame of the car, good aerodynamics. But if the engine sucks, it doesn't matter who the driver is, whether it's fictitious Cole Trickle or the real, whoever. Add your NASCAR driver there. That way we don't choose sides here. But that's what I'm talking about. The frame, Robert Duvall has built a good frame, all right, in this system in Gonzalo, but the engine is kind of having some problems right now. Although it's a pretty good engine, it's having some problems. And if it can overcome that, this definitely has a chance to make somewhat of a comeback later on, because farther to the west are warmer sea surface temperatures than even where it is now. Do keep that in mind as we go forward. And it's interesting, too, that this convective burst on the south side of the area of spin there, I stopped the loop for you. Here's the majority of the vorticity up here. Maybe this helps to tug this more to the south, and the more to the south it stays, the better chance it has to fight the dry air, and it can live to see another day. In the meantime, in the Gulf of Mexico, our depression is trying. I'm trying to speed it up for us here. Speaking of trying, it's trying to get its act together. Little bit more evidence of that banding that I've been talking about. You can see it's definitely starting to pull in more of the low-level bands in there. Kind of a large one over here. Big old feeder bands all the way over to Florida. I had one of my followers on YouTube, social media, send a picture that he took from his drone earlier, and it was, let me go back at that email. I should have pulled it up. I should have done that. You know what? I might just pull up my Gmail before we're all said and done and show you. Seeing if he added his name, because I really appreciate it when people do that. It just says from a YouTube follower, but you know who you are. Island Kid is the name on the email. But the point is that these the energy extends all the way over to Florida. All right, and this was from the Tampa area that he sent me this picture. And so when you have that energy spread out over such a large area, and it takes longer to bundle, it usually is a sign that it's taking a while to get together, and that's a good thing, because this is headed for Texas. And the longer this takes, the more of a rainmaker it will be, as opposed to wind, storm surge on top of that. There will be those impacts, of course, but not as bad as if this was really ramping up. But it's trying to get there. It's not going to be long that this gets designated as Tropical Storm Hannah, and we'll be, up to our 8th named storm, and it's not even August yet. And it does have energy to work with. The Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperatures, all of this through here, 30 Celsius, and this is close to 31 Celsius. The coastal bend is right up here, so the water temperatures trail off a little bit over here. When you see the blue, don't let that fool you in thinking that blue means cold. No, that's still very warm, at least 28 Celsius or so in there, looking at the legend, which is about 82 Fahrenheit. Plenty warm, just not quite as warm. I mean, come on, this is ridiculous up here. It's interesting how it has shifted. It was warmest down here. Now it's up in the Big Bend. This is the Big Bend area. This is the coastal bend. I screwed that up yesterday. So a lot of warm water for TD8 to work with. And we'll examine that more tomorrow, too, because we'll be within a day of landfall, and we can really hone in on what to expect as far as impacts. All right, the main part of this I want to go over are the models. This is the 12Z GFS. We will compare this to the 12Z Euro. My favorite level of the atmosphere to kind of look at everything, gives me a quick snapshot of what's happening, the health of the systems, is the 850 millibar vorticity. I talk about this an awful lot. You know that if you've watched my videos. And that gives me an idea of how something is doing, so to speak. All right? So 850 millibars is about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is made up of layers. And here we go. So the GFS has a pretty good representation of the overall perturbation of the pressure and wind field in this area. You understand what that means? The atmosphere is perturbed. Instead of the trade winds blowing all the way through like that, or maybe they're coming around the periphery of the Bermuda High like that, or whatever, there's this turning in here, this perturbation, you know, a disturbance literally in the force. I mean, I'm not even trying to be funny there. The force of the wind that normally comes through, yes. Now we have this kink in there, and it's a pretty healthy, trying to say so many things at one time. It's not stealthy at all. It's stout and healthy, stealthy. It's pretty strong right in there. So the GFS has the right idea. And it's pretty large overall. It's not all bundled up just yet. So let's move this out 24 hours. There we are. There's what would presumably be Hannah by tomorrow morning. This is Friday morning, approaching the coastal bend. And yes, there's Gonzalo. And we're going to look at that closer in just a moment. Let's just kind of do this one at a time. Go out another 24 hours. Landfall over in the coastal bend by 48 hours. And then it kind of turns back to the southwest a little bit. Never really ramps up too much. If this makes it, if Hannah makes it, Hannah to be, makes it to 50 to 60 miles per hour, that won't surprise me at all. That'll be in some of those stronger feeder bands that we would see set up. It's just going to run out of time, luckily. Now, look down here. There's Gonzalo. You got to figure that the GFS, and this is where we can get really complicated if we're not careful, the way the models ingest their data, satellites, upper air soundings, airplane data, we've heard a lot about that because of the pandemic and the reduction in airline travel. There's a lot of different ways for data to come into the computer models, what we call data assimilation, to then create the output that we see here. You got to figure that at 8 a.m. when the Eastern time, when the GFS was initialized, the 12 UTC initialization, that it knew that Gonzalo was having some issues. All right? You have to assume that the model, oh, okay, the vorticity is different, the thunderstorms are not as numerous, whatever. It has to kind of know that, you would think, in some form or fashion. That would be my assumption. That being said, assuming it does know that it fell apart overnight, look at it there. I mean, compared to what it shows Hannah over here over near the Rio Grande Valley, Hannah to be, this is still very potent. And so maybe the GFS is still sensing that Gonzalo will stay intact. It moves just south or maybe right over Barbados through the windwards, and then by 72 hours it's in the eastern Caribbean Sea. 96 hours starts to die out. This is a gauntlet through here for various reasons. The pressure differences, the wind gradient through here is a lot of reasons why they usually die out if they're not already large and formidable, but we'll see. You never know. So I'm very curious as to why the GFS still shows quite the system there coming through. And you can sit there and you can say, oh, it's because the GFS sucks. Well, no, it doesn't. It's not perfect. But you remember yesterday the Euro showed, and it still has yet to happen, but the Euro got me all upset and excited because it looked like it was going to send a very fast strengthening system into Texas. That could still happen, but the GFS hasn't shown that ever. The Euro seems to kind of bounce back and forth. I'm just saying, this is a good model, all right? The GFS has got its problems, but it's not like it's run off of some guy's Commodore 64, in an apartment, in the south of Austin or something. Not picking on Austin, I just came up with that. It's a good model, and so for it to show this confuses me. Maybe the model is sensing better times ahead, or maybe it's out of touch, and we'll see what the 0Z run tonight shows. Let's just look at it that way. Nevertheless, you folks in the Windward Islands, don't take your eyes off of it, because it could be headed for you. Certainly whatever's left of it is headed your way with rain and squalls and all that kind of good stuff, right? Well, that's how you look at it. You need the rain, but not the squalls. Now, speaking of the Euro, here's the Euro from 12Z today, the same exact layer of the atmosphere. Pretty good representation of TD8 there. And then over here, coming into the screen eventually, will be Gonzalo. So this is every 24 hours. So 24 hours out. Now here's something, okay, here we go. Both of them now show Gonzalo, like the Euro has never done much with the Gonzalo. It's always been kind of like, eh. Now it's trying to beef up Gonzalo a little bit more, and it certainly starts to beef up what would be Hannah a little bit more. And so let's just play comparison for a second, shall we? This is what we're here for. This is how I learn. So let's see, that's 24 hours. Let's get the times right. Let's back this up to 24 hours. So at 24 hours, the GFS, and we're focusing on Gonzalo right now, the GFS shows that, the Euro shows that, not too far apart. The way the model's resolutions are and how they interpret things are slightly different, but it's not like this is an open wave on the Euro and this is a formidable cyclone, right? You can see that just as sure as I can, and they're both fairly similar as far as Hannah to be over here in the Northwest Gulf. All right? So let's keep going with the Euro. This is 48 hours. Oh, are you kidding me? It strengthens Gonzalo a little bit more. And yes, it does continue to ramp up Hannah near Corpus or in vicinity, somewhere near Corpus Christi. Going to be a headache. I can't get there. I'll talk about that towards the end here. And there's the spoiler for you. No, I'm not going, and it's mainly because I can't. I just cannot get there in time. It's a difference in driving from Wilmington to Houston and then another several hours down here. But we'll talk about it at the end so you understand what I'm going to be doing instead. So that's 48 hours out, 72 hours out. I mean, come on. It holds on to Hannah over here into Mexico. Okay, we'll see. And then Gonzalo still hanging on. Wow, that's interesting. You know what else is interesting? Let's broaden out the shot and go to 72 hours on the wider picture. Look what's coming off the coast of Africa. This is the outlook that I showed you earlier. Did I? I don't even know if I did. Let's make sure. Real quick, if I didn't mention it, it's like, oh yeah, there's also that. I did forget, but that's fine. There it is. You saw it already on social media, I'm sure. So this is the interpretation of that from the Euro. And there's Gonzalo at day 3. This is this large pocket of energy, the one that's in the outlook now. And by day 4, Gonzalo starts to die off in the same area that the GFS has, so at least that makes sense. By day 5, this system starts to consolidate now. Another pouch of energy coming off of Africa has already come off. And then by day 6, and then day 7, what else can I say? All right, so sometimes it's despair, not despair, but I don't laugh because I think this is funny. It's, we told you this was probably coming. Is that an oxymoron? We're never certain about anything, but the signs have been there. And here it is, and that is still July 30th on that map right there. Look, it's right next to me. July 30th. It's not even August yet. And the potential for another impactful system for the islands somewhere, maybe this is a week out. Wow. So it is what it is. We, at least, I've said this a few months ago when the pandemic stuff was starting and there was so much worry and anxiety, and there still is. At least we know hurricanes. We know them. Those of us that live near the coast, we know what to do. We know how to deal with it. We know who to trust. Myself, others, Levi, Ben, and you know who, your local TV people, the National Hurricane Center, your Weather Service office, your local, whatever your country is, that your weather service, meteorologists, and I'm a geographer, not a degreed meteorologist, but I'm a degreed geographer. We know what we're looking at. That's my point. And so we got to take this very seriously. A lot of hurricanes are coming, and I can't put it any other way than that. All right, so we best be prepared. Now, I am not going to be able to go to Texas, and mainly because even if I had left at 8 o'clock this morning, it would still take me at least 2 days just to get to Houston, and that's driving 10 to 12 hours. Then it's another several hours down to the coastal bend, and all of a sudden it's sometime later tomorrow, right? And then I got to set out all the cameras that I set out. And it's just, I don't operate that way. And you might say, well, Mark, why don't you get on a plane and fly everything out there? Well, if it was that simple, I would already be in Houston. Because of the restrictions put in place and all the different things going on with the pandemic and the flying and all that, it's much more difficult for me to airline my batteries that I use. And it's these suckers right here. Make sure I don't cause these are my battery packs that power the cameras. I kid you not. That's a battery. And I've got 34 of these things, and I don't take them all with me every time. But I can't take, it takes 2 of these batteries to power one camera box. One powers the hotspot, the other powers the camera, and I can't airline them right now. It's just not possible with the way everything else is going on and the restrictions on the different planes. Am I going to be on a Canadian, what is an RJ 900 or whatever, regional jet? I think it's the 900 that doesn't allow for roller bags, because I can pack these in a roller bag, but if they don't let me take a roller bag on because it's a RJ 900 or whatever it is, a CRJ 900, then anyway, I can't. So I will miss Hannah to be, because it's not like every time there's a disturbance, I can just go to Texas and hope that it turns into something. I'm not quite able to do that. Even with all the funding in the world, I still have to, hey family, bye, I'm going to go see if this tropical wave turns into something. Doesn't quite work that way. So anyway, you guys along the Texas coast, please feel free to share what you get. Be careful doing so. There may be some evacuations in some low-lying areas just to keep people out of trouble, but it's not going to be a big problem. So if you're in and around the area and you want to shoot me something, tag me on Twitter, email me. I'll put my email address in the description of today's video, and I'd love to share it. Because what I'm going to be doing is what I was planning on doing anyway, and that is going here to Arizona. And you might be like, what the heck? So as a geographer, I am very interested in more than just hurricanes, even though that's my forte. I also like the desert monsoon. I think that's a fascinating phenomenon. And it's also interesting when you get tropical cyclones that come up out of the Pacific here and bring their moisture into the desert southwest. No such luck this year, thank goodness. Not yet anyway. But the monsoon is active. And I'm going to head out tomorrow morning, flying into Phoenix, be there about this time tomorrow, and I'll be out there throughout the weekend. I'll be taking some equipment with me out there, mainly GoPros and my drone, And the idea is that I'm going to go down to Tucson, this vicinity. There's some burn scars down here and some up northeast of Phoenix that I'll be keeping an eye on. What are burn scars? Those are the areas in the mountains where you get a raging wildfire and it leaves behind a scarred terrain. And when it rains on it, it's much more apt to flood and send mud flows and debris. And I want to go out there and study that and observe it and post reports about it. So you guys in Texas, you tell me what's going on with Hannah to be, and I'll tell you what's going on out in the desert with this monsoon action over the weekend. Then I'll be back on Monday, and it'll be time to probably rock and roll for something heading in from the Atlantic. It's just a matter of time. So that's my plan. That's my rationale behind it. So there you go. Don't forget, I am on Twitter. I mentioned that, at HurricaneTrack. You're already watching on YouTube. Awesome to have you. The growth on YouTube has been incredible the last 3 years. I've had YouTube since 2006. My channel's been on since 2006, but it's really exploded in the last 3 years or so. And of course, the best way to take advantage of all that we do is through our crowdfunding apparatus, Patreon. And if you don't know what that is, check it out, patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. It's much more than a membership or a subscription. You're going to have to just see to find out. And for those of you that are current patrons, tell your friends about it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's the most incredible thing. I mean, really, it's amazing. It's a two-way deal where we help each other, and it provides the funding that I need to do this, 100% crowdfunded. That is incredible, and a big round of applause to all of you for supporting what I do, because we get to all do it together at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to. All right, so my plan tomorrow, I'll get up, I'll do a quick blog post, throw that on Patreon. I'm going to do a morning update, and then I fly to Phoenix, and I'll do updates from out there. I'll be taking all my laptops and everything I need with me, so it's not like I'm going to drop off. All right, I'll be around. I'll just be a few time zones to the west. Have a great rest of your afternoon. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. Buckle up. It's coming. Be ready. Be safe. And use your common sense as we deal with what's coming, all right? It's all we can do. I am Mark Sudduth. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.